Welcome back to Sunday Vibes, one and all. As you can see, we are back in the beautiful club House 5, just off of Leicester Square in London. Come here and watch all of your sporting entertainment. Of course, it's Ryder Cup weekend, so you can watch that here. And there's some massive games in the Premier League, including Spurs versus Liverpool. Zach Jalab, Doogie Critchley join me. Doogie has had a bit of a whiff this morning.
Yes.
Bit sweaty.
Yes.
Got on the wrong train.
I got a train the wrong way. It was supposed to be a 20-minute journey. I went to nearly the coast of England. I went to Sevenoaks, and it took about an hour and a half all round. Delayed the shoot by an hour. Very sorry, guys, but I am now here. But yeah, great news about the Ryder Cup. It's all blue at the moment as we film this on Friday. It's very exciting.
Don't say this.
Why
This
have
is
you
the
said
most
that?
Doogie Critchley thing.
The
Why
curse.
said
I've been
that?
on good form with the curse.
Yeah, but also this video goes out on Sunday when things
Why would you
change.
say that?
Good form. You spoke about Chelsea and their stats, and we got absolutely hammered by
you
Villa.
did say that.
I was just trying to be nice to Chelsea fans for once.
I
you
can
know?
see Chelsea going on a really good run.
Win
They
one
do
game.
have Fulham this weekend. Come on, that's got to be the time. It's my turn.
Monday, but brilliant. I
Unfortunately,
can't wait to cry on Monday.
Is that a
for
Monday? Okay.
Yeah.
How are you, mate?
Yeah, not bad, mate. Not too bad. Off to Italy, so looking forward to it.
Italia.
Okay, right. As you can see from today's title, we're looking at mistakes made by every single Premier League club. All 20 of the sides are going to feature today. Now, usually we would go A to Z. I forgot my alphabets there. Sorry, guys. We're going reverse order today, aren't we? We're going
Yes.
reverse alphabet order.
idea
Now, the
for
way
memory.
this is going to work is the two guys are going to pitch me, the assistant manager, a mistake that has been made at the club. I'm going to have to then take that to the gaffer, who's then going to have to take it upstairs. I'm going to have to deal with it. I don't want to have to deal with it, but we're going to have to deal with it. So let's get the mistakes from Wolverhampton Wanderers.
Yes, I'll kick things off for
Go
this
for it.
one. Look, Wolves had a really tough situation going into this. Really tough finances, losing Lopetegui last minute. Obviously, putting a lot of their faith into youngsters. And Gary O'Neill, I think, whilst he hasn't got maybe results go his way fully, I think he's done a pretty good job so far with everything that he's had. But I think the number one mistake is just not getting in a striker in any way, shape or form. I know they obviously got, what's his name
Cunha.
from last year as
Kaladzic
well.
coming back.
Yeah, he's come back. It's going to be interesting how he works out. But after such a bad injury and such a long time out of the game, it's a big risk to kind of rely on him. Cunha's had nice moments and bright moments, but I spoke to a Wolves fan, and he kind of just felt like they've dominated games, but they can't put the ball in the back of the net.
Classic Wolves tale, isn't
Exactly,
it?
and he kind of felt as well that Gary O'Neill, whilst he has done better than they expected, is making weird managerial decisions as well during the game. I mean, that's more of a side of kind of like substitutions and tactics that are being played. But I think if we're looking at the kind of number one mistake, it's just not having someone up top. But again, hard to do when you don't have over £20 million to go and spend on a striker. And they kind of spent that money last year. We saw obviously the board come out and put the statement saying, look, guys, after COVID and after everything that's happened over the last few years, we don't have a lot of money to spend this year. And we've put a lot of our money into kind of future-proofing the club, getting into youngsters that we hope are going to kind of really perform over the next few years. And so, yeah, I think that's the number one mistake for me. But I feel Wolves have been. I feel like Wolves have been one of the most unlucky teams so far this season.
They definitely
were
have.
unlucky against Luton, unlucky against Manchester United, and if those results become a draw against United and a win against Luton, they're much further from the drop than they are right now.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. They've been extremely unlucky. Finances, especially with FFP, they're just extremely tight as well. And, you know, they did spend a lot of money on Cunha. So, like,
Obligation to buy.
he does kind of have to start scoring some goals. Like, I know that he doesn't have a track record of doing that necessarily, does he? Like, obviously, when he was in Germany, he was very highly thought of. But even then, he was more of a dribbler, a ball progressor than he ever was a natural goal scorer. And the same was the case at Atletico Madrid. And it's kind of the case again at Wolves. He's a fantastic progressor of the ball with his take-ons and stuff, but I don't know whether he's a natural finisher. The same can be said of probably Fabio Silva, and we haven't seen enough of Kaladzic yet with that injury. So, Dukes, are you agreeing? That
Yeah, I am agreeing with that. I think Pedro Neto has actually been absolutely superb, which is awesome to see. Like, we thought he might explode a few years ago, a few injury issues, but this year it feels like he's taken that enormous step up. He's already on 1 goal and 4 assists, and they need him to maintain this form because they've got a really difficult run of fixtures coming out. They've got City, Bournemouth, Villa, and then Newcastle in their next 4, which
Gary.
is pretty bleak. So I basically want to try and increase the creativity levels in this side as well, because you can't really do much now. The market's finished. I actually think Pablo Sarabia is a player that could potentially play more. He's only started 2 of their games so far. He's 13th in the squad for league minutes. Yet the only player that's created more chances than him is Pedro Neto. And actually his expected assists per 90, I think it's only topped by Mo Salah and Harvey Barnes, interestingly, in the Premier League.
So because he's played no minutes though.
Well, he's played about
150.
But still, this is a player that's been at Sevilla. He's been at PSG. I think he's clearly good enough to improve a Wolves side that don't really have fantastic right-wing options, I don't think. And you could bench one of Hwang or Cunha. I'd probably bench Cunha because Hwang started the season a little bit better.
Yeah, Hwang was
and get Wolves' attack going. I say going. I think Gary O'Neill's actually been more front-footed than most people expected, and they're taking the initiative a lot more in games than we saw under Nuno and at times under Lopetegui too. But their defence is actually taking a big drop off. They're 18th for expected goals against, 14th for expected goals. So it feels like attack is going to be the best form of defence for them this year. And I think Sarabia into the side could help that attack continue to, really click.
Ooh.
So what are you taking to the Baths?
Yeah, I think they're 14th by expected goals, aren't they? So they don't create loads of chances, but I do think I'm going to go with Zach on this one. I think the striking options, and obviously there are caveats like we said about the money and the fact that Cunha was arriving at the club with the obligation and Kaladzic was coming back from injury, but the lack of an out-and-out goal scorer that can has a history of putting the ball in the net. Even Kaladzic, not the biggest amount of goals in Germany when he joined. I think his highest ever Bundesliga table scoring season was like 14, 15. So I'm going to go with Zach on this one. So Zach, you 1-0 up.
Okay. Yeah, nice. Do you want to kick off with West Ham?
Yeah, West Ham. So actually, they're a side that is, look at the table. I think it's looking really good for them. I think they're 7th in the league, but actually by expected points, they should be 14th. And that is because they have had a really difficult run of fixtures. Yeah. Their only defeats, though, have come against City and Liverpool, so I think they've done really well on that. They absolutely thrashed Brighton with about 20% possession. Moyes' ball's in full effect. The crosses are flying in. The set pieces, so important. James Ward-Prowse has looked like a really good addition at that level, as I think many of us expected to. I'm trying to integrate more of their new signings. Like Mavropanos, I think is going to find it difficult to get into that side initially because Zuma and Aged, I think, are actually a really solid duo.
Defo.
But I want to see Mohamed Kudus get into this side, and it's quite difficult to see where he does because if you're going Edson Alvarez, Paqueta, and potentially Souček or Ward-Prowse in midfield, I think Kudus is ultimately really the best in central midfield. That's very difficult to break in. And Antonio is so crucial to the way they play up front as well, and has actually finished really well. I mean, that goal against Chelsea, I seem to remember, he scored another great goal a couple of weeks ago as well, very similar to that style.
Brighton, that was, yeah.
Yeah, I think it was Brighton. And he's just so effective in that.
Shocking against Liverpool, though. He had a howler against Liverpool.
He really did. And he got subbed quite early in that game as well. But do we want to see Kudus replace Antonio? Do we want to see him come into midfield and potentially move Paqueta out wide? I think Benrahma's probably the most droppable on current form, but Kudus hasn't really played on the left wing beforehand. So this was more of a selection dilemma to bring to the gaffer. I want to see Kudus get in.
I'm not sure about where the mistake is there. I think Kudus has got to be bedded in. I think you've got to give him time to bed into the club. It's a whole new environment. It's a whole new culture. I think to just throw him into a midfield.
West Ham were difficult to find a mistake for because they are doing very well.
This one's difficult. The next one's even harder. But in terms of West Ham, look, it might seem a little bit easier to say essentially the kind of same thing, but I think it's a reliable striker again. They've done really well in getting their midfield sorted, especially with how late in the window they sold Declan Rice and got in the two midfielders in James Ward-Prowse and Edson Alvarez. Fantastic acquisitions. And whilst I think Antonio does great jobs here and there and is very much a purple patch player, there are also periods where Antonio's injured or he's not putting the ball in the back of the net or having games against Liverpool where he's dropping a bit of a stinker. And they've tried before to try and get in somebody that can be this leading man in Scamacca. And it didn't work. But that shouldn't, in my opinion... So
was that the mistake? Selling Scamacca in the summer?
No, not necessarily selling Scamacca, but not getting in a reliable striker. Like, it didn't work for Scamacca. Didn't work in the system. That's fair enough, okay? They've admitted their defeat. They've admitted their mistake and sold him. That's brilliant. But they haven't then corrected that. I think he's loaned,
but yeah.
But I think it's with the idea but they haven't then corrected that by thinking, okay, let's get in a striker that's going to fit the system.
Well, they still got Danny at the club, Danny Ings.
I mean, he's been there for a while, and that's not worked out, right? He's not been able to displace Antonio. And like, there has been the idea of putting Jared Bowen through the middle, or Kudus through the middle. But it's like, Bowen is playing so well now in his current position. Do you want to move him out of there?
And it's not how Moyes utilises his number 9. We've heard Mikel Antonio speak about how Moyes utilises number 9s on Filthy Fellas, haven't we? With the working off scraps, running the channels.
Antonio's perfect for that.
And the whole point might be, what I'm saying is, I'm not saying like replace Antonio, but have another option there that's going to be reliable when Antonio's not performing or for when he's injured.
Yeah, because there was a significant
the worry for me.
There was a significant drop
well
off last season in Antonio's game, wasn't there? I think he gone 10 goal back-to-back seasons, and then I think he scored 5 last season. So it was a significant drop in output.
He's getting older. Like he's been a great player for West Ham. Actually, all things considered, I always remember him starting at right back at one point during his career for them. But I just think maybe they could look towards the future. And look, it's not easy to go and find that exact striker. It does take a little bit of time. And with the way the transfer window worked, they didn't have a lot of time to fix the midfielder and then go find someone else. And they've done really well. So if I had to look at the one mistake, it would be maybe not getting in that reliable striker.
I think Zach's going 2-0 up here. I think you got to give Kudus time to bed in, man.
But I think we're looking at this in quite different ways. I'm fixing mistakes in their current system and playing style and personnel, whereas maybe Zach's going more general, they should have signed someone in the market, which is closed.
I think
it's an objective.
I'll be taking
it's
it.
an objective.
But what's the assistant?
Don't you point off camera, Henry. I think they're both
But
mistakes.
what's the assistant manager? But what's the manager going to do when Zach says, bring in a striker? It's like,
no, but that's the naming of the mistake, right? That's how I think
you can take it however you want. I think Zach's taking it a bit
Word
more
of warning,
literal.
a lot of mine are very literal
and I'm sure
right now.
I will be taking some of yours, Dukes. Don't worry about that. I know you're panicking early doors. Train Rider's just got you a bit heated up, but don't worry, I will take some of yours. But I agree with Jalab. I think that the lack of a secondary option in the forward line, I just don't think Danny Ings fits the system. That was a bizarre signing at the time. He's a really good striker, and I think he would fit at a club that needed more of an out-and-out in-the-box penalty kind of striker. But that's not what he wants from his players, is it?
It's not.
Get him to Wolves.
It's going to be interesting to see what he does. Yeah, you never know. You know what? That could be the most Danny Ings, and no one would ever hear about it either until it's just announced.
It would be announced the minute before he signed.
Yeah, literally. Okay, Tottenham. This was really difficult.
Yeah, this is one of the hardest ones.
Because Tottenham,
what mistakes are they making?
Exactly,
yeah.
and when you look at what they're doing so well. In every single element, every single signing they've made so far has really proven to be has hit the ground running. Mickey van der Ven been brilliant at centre back. Udoji's come in and just looked fantastic at left back. Had a great 70 minutes against Arsenal. First 20 a little bit 50-50, and then really got into the game. And that's fantastic to see already. The keeper it's just been fantastic. Vicario has been brilliant.
Brilliant.
He loves him.
No, but
The passion.
I've said it a few times. I've said it a few times now. When he first joined, I wasn't necessarily impressed by the signing, especially considering how they went so in for Raya, and it didn't work out. So it has been really, really strong from Spurs, and Postecoglou's been fantastic. I guess if you're going to look at any mistake, it's maybe not bringing in kind of another backup, adding a bit of depth to that side, but that's being really, really critical. I was thinking more so for Maddison, right? If Maddison gets injured, what happens there? But then it's tough to do that, because I think if you go into the transfer window going, okay, we're going to bring in Maddison, and then we're also going to bring in Maddison as a replacement for when he's injured. That's such a tough thing to do. But that's my one mistake. But I found it really hard, and that's the only thing I could really think of.
Yeah, definitely. I'm really excited for that game against Liverpool tomorrow.
How do you think it's going to go? We may as well discuss it, because it's this afternoon, isn't it?
Madison has a little bit of a knee issue, apparently, which I think is quite crucial to the game. I think he probably will be fit to start, apparently, but you really want him at 100%. Because I think they can cause Liverpool some issues.
Defensively, I think.
That game against Arsenal was absolutely fascinating. I didn't actually think either side played their best in possession, but it was really impressive how after a few errors, Spurs stuck at it and ended up with a really good point in that game. Arsenal threatening or pushing late on, but not really creating too many clear-cut opportunities. That was a really good point for Spurs away in a stadium that they've really struggled at in the league. Don't think they've won there since November 2010 in the league. So it's been a long old time. But after Liverpool this weekend, Spurs play Luton, Fulham and Crystal Palace. So they get a point or more against Liverpool this weekend. There could be a situation that there's a bit of a gap between them and fifth by the end of October, which is really quite exciting. I mean, no one really expected that. Even, Postecoglou's biggest fans wouldn't have saw this coming, really. They've got a quite long injury list already, but it's mainly their backup players, like Perisic out for the season, Bentancur coming back soon, but Sessegnon, Hill, Lo Celso and Brennan Johnson's out now as well. So in terms of what I'd change in their starting 11 right now, there's not a lot. I think I'd probably persist with Son down the middle.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
I'd probably keep Richarlison as an impact sub at the moment. I know he had that great game the week before last where he was absolutely excellent, but I think Solomon's looked really dangerous in points when he's played as well. Maybe it's time to put him on left wing as well. You kind of want to think about Liverpool's biggest weaknesses this weekend, and they do have some injury issues at the back, but Trent is someone that can be got at. And maybe Postecoglou, if he's fit, and maybe Postecoglou wants Son, his best attacker, against him. But I think Solomon could cause him some issues as well. He's very jinky, he's very good on the ball, he's pretty composed in tight spaces. So for now, my tip is just keep Son down the middle.
So is that a mistake? Are you saying the mistake was not playing?
I find him a mistake in Postecoglou right now. It's very difficult.
I'm happy to kind of concede this point in general, just like.
I think I'm not going to award
the spirit of the Ryder Cup.
I'm not going to award a point. I'm not going to award a point.
Like either of the
I just don't think I kind of.
What would be your mistake if you had one?
There's just not. There just isn't. Like, I think whilst it's great to do this for 1 to 20, there isn't one for Spurs.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I don't think there is a mistake to be had there right now. So I'm going to award that one a tie. I think some of these top teams, it's going to be really hard to do it for, i.e. Manchester City as well. But let's keep progressing because there are some sides we're going to talk about that have potentially made a few slip-ups. So Sheffield United, where do you want to start?
This is punchy. I'm suggesting that the mistake is keeping Paul Heckingbottom for any longer.
Is that yours as
This
well?
is the same, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, essentially.
Great minds. I mean, I just don't think they're going to stay up with Paul Heckingbottom.
Yeah.
I don't think they've got much of a chance, to be honest. No offence, Sheffield United fans, even if they change manager now. But I think it is now time to roll the dice. They've got a really difficult set of fixtures coming up.
But is it time to roll the dice when you've got a difficult set of fixtures coming up? Or do you just persist through the pain
But
of
they
the
could
fixtures
still easily be on 1 point after this.
and get to the
And
international
the
break?
conference could
And
be
change it.
absolutely
And
miserable.
there is that thing about getting a new manager in where it can just change things for you, right? And it can like give you that. It makes the squad just kind of feel something different.
But is it West Ham?
They've
Fulham?
got West Ham, Fulham, then United, Arsenal.
See, the thing is though, if you change your manager now, and the new manager comes in and
takes a 6-0
and takes
beating.
a 6-0 beating Arsenal, 6-0 beating at West Ham or something mad like that, then.
But what happens if they could feasibly just take a 6-0 beating with Heckingbottom, and they could get a.
But then you've lost all your bump.
They might have got a draw with this new manager. Like, it's such a tough thing to say.
It's a difficult one, isn't it?
And I think the thing is, when you look back to last season and what people did, right? Like, Bournemouth were one of the first ones, and they got O'Neill in straight away, and that worked for them. Wolves went and got Lopetegui in. Villa went and got Unai Emery in. Like, these crazy managers that, more so.
The squad level was so different.
It was so
vastly
different.
It
is very different out there. But I think if you look at the managerial market, there are some. You'd have to pitch them.
They're going to get Chris Wilder.
Incredible.
They'll get Chris Wilder.
What I will say though, if they're going to sack Heckingbottom and get Chris Wilder in, what's the point?
Well, he did do very well in his first year back up with Sheffield United, and is used to a lot of these players. A lot of them are still there.
His final season at Sheffield United
was really not good, and actually his time since has not been very good as well. He was really poor at Middlesbrough. I think he lasted 11 games at Watford. You could do something completely polar opposite and get someone like Ralph Hasenhüttl.
This is what I mean. Or Marcelino's now available, right? Like,
come on, bro. What are we
to
talking about
it
here?
would. But there are managers
what are we talking about?
I think it's very punchy.
But
Marcelino.
would you have sat here and said last year that Lopetegui would have gone to
Lopetegui was going
Unai
to
Emery was
a George Mendes funded club that
Who has
had
been in
players in
Europe.
the midfield like Ruben Neves. They were bringing in potentially a 50 million euro
Unai
striker.
Emery to Aston Villa when Aston Villa were like bottom of the table.
Aston Villa still had very high level
rich
players and extremely lofty ambitions. Like, I think Sheffield United's ambitions
we were all
are
very surprised,
at the moment the owner is considering selling the club.
Yeah.
They are kind of accepting the fact that they are likely to go down. Like Villa last season, even when Gerrard was struggling, we're thinking the squad is good enough to be pushing in around mid-table.
I get that. My point being, right, is there are better managers that can go to Sheffield United out there. And okay, they might not be the level of Marcelino, so on and so forth, but they can go and get them if they attract them with the right kind of project.
I can imagine them also ending up with someone like Dean Smith or something like
definitely. And that's the most likely situation, if we're being brutally honest. And I do wonder there if it's worth it if sacking Heckingbottom just to go and get that one of those two.
Yeah. I just think that I would be going to the international break at this stage. I think with that fixture list in October, I would be trying to get to the international break, even if it.
But that is only 2 games.
Struggle
away,
your
right?
way. It's in November, isn't it? So
there's an October break.
October 17th is an international break.
I would be trying to get.
I think there's only two more fixtures.
I would definitely be trying to get to the international break then. If it's 2 fixtures away, for sure.
I don't know.
I would be trying to get to the international break. Like, yeah. But you've both said the same there, so it's
It's a no points.
no points. Still
No
2-0 to
Come on,
Zachary.
need something here.
Okay.
Forest.
Now, it isn't about a signing. It's about the way they're slightly playing their football. I actually have been generally quite happy with how Nottingham Forest have been playing this year. They look fantastic under Cooper. Like, they've got some brilliant additions. Callum Hudson-Odoi looks brilliant against Sheffield United. But one of their issues is they haven't got great game management at the moment. The mistake is not maybe enough experience in game management or whatever it might be in that kind of way. Manchester United, 2-0 up, and they let them go back into win 3-2. Now, obviously, with the way Man United have been playing, I think that was quite an error on their side, especially when you kind of get to the scoreline that you do at Old Trafford. That's fantastic. Again, it is Old Trafford, it is Manchester United. These things can happen, I understand. But also against Sheffield United, a team that are rock bottom of the Premier League, do not look that great this year. Their game management against them was not so good either in the end. I think game management is something that they need to address. It's tough considering that front line is actually quite young and quite exciting, and I think at times, maybe rather than going through to try and create some more chances, you've got to be a little bit more conservative, and it might be something like that. I don't know exactly in what way it is, by adding a certain player, or just by kind of Cooper telling them, like, understanding the kind of situation you're in during these points. But it is game management, and so that's the way I would look at it.
So you've gone mistake is the poor game management.
Yeah, and again, it's tough to say because I think Forest would be really happy with their start to the Premier League.
Especially 'cause they played really
and deservedly so. They've been really good.
Hard fixture list.
But I just
Chelsea,
think
United,
if there is
City.
one thing to look at, it is maybe that game management side of things.
Fair
Dukes?
enough. Yeah.
What's your mistake?
My mistake with Forest, again, it was quite difficult because I think they're doing a really good job. And Gibbs White, Alanga, Cho, they're going to create chances for Awoniyi. I think they potentially made a mistake in the market letting Emmanuel Dennis go. I know he wasn't brilliant for Forest last year, and Forest fans really don't like him. But actually, if Awoniyi gets injured, it's Divock Origi or Chris Wood.
I forgot Origi went to them.
And I just don't think either of them are particularly well suited to a counter-attacking system. Like, Origi was a good penalty.
Did you watch Emmanuel Dennis last year?
Did you watch Origi last year at Milan? Milan was,
before
he was
Dennis was very
atrocious. So Origi, I've got some stats here on Origi. He started 12 league games in the last 3.5 seasons for Liverpool, Milan, and now Forest. Awoniyi missed 12 games last year with injury. He probably will pick up an injury at some stage. He's playing pretty much every minute. He's the talisman. And I just think they're quite short in that position now for a counter-attacking system. Like, Origi, not particularly pacey, good around the sort of 6-yard box, but actually was really poor at Milan, has arrived really low on confidence. Chris Wood deep into his 30s now. I think they look really short in that area.
Could they not just, and like we've seen it on occasion, where they move to a slightly different style, where it's a front three, Morgan Gibbs White almost plays as like a false nine, and then they add another body into the midfield. Like, they've done that before. I think
you could play Alanga more
the
centrally
idea
as well.
of I don't think we can have Emmanuel Dennis' mistake leaving Forest. Honestly, he had to go. He had to go.
I think it was an oversight. I didn't think he was good last year, but I think he is a talented player.
I do wonder the wages he was on as well, because like he just barely played. He barely played, and if he was on decent wages, and even I remember by January they were looking at getting rid of him, right?
And can we put some respect on Christopher Wood's name?
Can we?
Just because you two are best mates.
No, I think.
I mean, yeah, he's been perfectly good. He's
fine.
had a perfectly fine Premier League career. Like, massive respect to him.
Scored
New
this season
Zealander,
already?
set a new,
Impact.
comes off the bench occasionally to good effect. Has been an example to New Zealanders everywhere. But is he going to, be an adequate replacement for Awoniyi in this system?
Okay, so I'll give the mistake to Dukes. I think
Is that a pity point?
It's a bit of a pity point.
Oh my
but
God.
I
Show some
think more
respect.
of not signing a more coherent backup
Yes.
than Origi
Sure.
is the mistake I'll give you.
Fair.
I think
All
your
I'm going to
in-game
say is
management
all
point is
3
really
points
good
were
though.
given about us going, they need a better striker.
Yeah.
As
Yeah,
a reliable
I
backup.
think your in-game management point is very, very good though.
Fair enough. I actually want to shout out Tom, the Sheffield United fan who I spoke to about that, because he was
Sheffield
very,
United, Nottingham Forest, you mean?
Sorry, Nottingham Forest. He was very
Thanks, Tom.
very thankful.
Okay,
No respect to Tom
Newcastle.
at the end.
Newcastle.
Newcastle United. Do you
Sure.
want to go? I've got a little bit of
I think it's been quite a weird season for Newcastle. Started really well, then went on a big dip. But actually, the last few performances have been really promising, obviously.
Yeah.
Beat Sheffield United, thrashed Sheffield United, beat City in the Cup. Put quite an even game in the Cup after a difficult first half for them. They're now 8th in the Premier League. They don't actually have too many problems that you can fix outside of a transfer market. I still think they're short on the right wing. Almiron's played pretty much every single game. I still think they could have got a more natural defensive midfielder and free up Tonali and Bruno Guimaraes to go forward. I thought they were really susceptible on the break against Milan. I think they conceded 25 shots in that game. That was not good. Four of their five most used players this year are over the age of 31. That's something to keep an eye on. But I don't think there are too many mistakes going on with Newcastle at the moment. I think the fact they've got two excellent strikers is keeping them both sharp. I think they've got excellent left wing options. I just think they probably should have signed a better right winger.
So your mistake is not signing a right winger?
Potentially. Yeah, I was struggling with Newcastle.
Okay. So I've delved in, lads.
There we go.
It isn't necessarily the first team where this mistake is happening.
What's happening here, Jeff?
But the academy is being run really poorly. Really poorly.
Now,
Deep dive.
So the under-21s and the academy that's at Newcastle right now, it's apparently a bit of a shambles what's happening. The facilities are really, really bad. And basically they're losing a lot of their high-quality players to other clubs now because they are not able to offer them, one, a path into the first team, 100%, because they're spending a lot of money on these young guys. And they've had a couple come through for sure, but also they're going out and buying Livramento at right wing back. They've bought in Lewis Hall, they've bought in Tonali, like these guys who are very young but cost a lot of money, so the path necessarily isn't there. And also, they aren't necessarily given the facilities for them to do better and perform better. Like, apparently their facilities compared to like the first team are nowhere near. Now, I think Newcastle have said before they want to get up there, and it's going to take time. And obviously, it's going to take investment, and it is a slow thing. However, right now, a lot of fans seem to be worried about they're going to be losing a lot of their star academy players to rivals. I've seen some already go to Man City, some already head to London because of this. I think I haven't seen one going to Chelsea as well in the summer. And so fans do seem quite worried about losing this kind of connection between the academy, which has seen the likes of the Longstaff brothers come through. And Anderson, as you mentioned, I think we also saw one of them play, another one play against Man City.
Yeah, he did.
Well,
he started.
And was very good. His name's escaping me as well. And that is positive signs, and like it's brilliant for them to see. But I just think there is a worry at the moment that they're basically going to lose a lot of their stars to other academies and other teams that offer more.
Good research from Jalal.
Yeah, I mean, given that you were struggling to put a mistake on the table, I think it's going to have to be Jalad.
3-1.
Yeah, 3-1.
Hey.
Very good research there. Newcastle fans, let us know what you think about the current academy situation, or whether Jalab has just lied to us. Because I don't know. I don't know enough about the Newcastle academy situation to have true, honest comment there. So I'm just going to have to trust my fellow Football Daily presenter.
Cheers.
Okay.
Cheers.
Man United, I'm coming storming back.
Ooh.
I'm back, baby. You know, a lot of injuries, obviously. Some of them are starting to come back, though. Lissandro, Reguilon, McTominay, Eriksson should be back soon. They've got an interesting run of fixtures. Palace at home, Galatasaray at home, Brentford at home, Sheffield United away. So this is the time where they could build a bit of momentum. Really need a win against Galatasaray next week in the Champions League to get that back on track. But the situation I want to talk about and focus on is the right wing situation. I do like Facundo Pellistri. I thought he actually played really well against Crystal Palace. Looked really dangerous. But I think it's time to move Bruno Fernandes out there or Mason Mount and allow Amrabat, Mount and Casemiro to bond in midfield. So that we need to see Casemiro and Amrabat. He made such a difference.
Do not
Wednesday.
move Bruno, Diggs.
I think Bruno is perfectly good on the right wing.
Please
Or play
don't
Mason
move
Mount.
I
there.
agree, Mason Mount.
Mason Mount has played perfectly well there as well. But I just think it's time to persist with one of them rather than we've seen a little bit of Pellistri. There's talk about who's going to fill in there next. Just put Bruno or Mount there. I think they are both very capable of creating chances from the right. I mean, Mount's played there for Chelsea in the past. More of an inverted right winger than Man United to potentially play. But I think he's got the sort of intelligence, the tactical movement, etc. And United looked, I know it was against a poor Crystal Palace side that had made 7 changes, but it was the start of their season for me. I thought they actually looked really good. The interchange was back, the energy was back, Casemiro was back on form, and it was a really promising performance. And sometimes, as I put on Twitter after the game, you can just say, that was a good performance, fair enough. Whereas rival fans always want to say, oh, but did you see who it was against? Whatever. But yeah, the right wing situation, I think it can be solved by either Mount or Bruno, who I thought was very good there last year as well.
Let's please not play Bruno out there. Like,
you just think he's too good centrally?
Please don't. He's just... You've got to have him involved constantly, Bruno. Like, he needs to be... But I agree with the Mount situation. I do believe Anthony's back in training today. So, TBC on what's happening there. But I also would play Mount out there. I think Mount out there was contributing to 0.77 non-penalty expected goals and assists per 90 at Chelsea when he was playing from that right-hand side, although a lot of the time it was inverted. The issue United do have is, although Dalot gets forward, he also is kind of wanting to
doesn't
invert
overlap,
at times.
does he?
He's not a massive overlapping fullback. So I would also play Mason Mount out there, and I think that maybe has been a mistake in a couple of games.
You're up
but it's
against
been a
it.
mistake that he hasn't necessarily had the chance
he hasn't
to
been
rectify
able
because
to,
he's been injured. Mount's been injured. Bruno has played out there at times. Amrabat's been injured. So we haven't really been able to see how he wants to line up with his best 11 available.
Yeah. Ten Hag's been going into fights with two hands tied behind his back.
Yeah. But one thing he could have sorted, though, in the summer was buying a centre-back. And that's my mistake. I think you've gone into it and you've gone, okay, we're going to sign Johnny Evans. The fact that United have started the defence this season with Johnny Evans and Harry Maguire as the starting centre-backs is a ridiculous mistake to be making. Okay, you've got Martinez, you've got Varane.
Shaw can play then.
But Varane is known as somebody who is a bit injury-prone. Lindelof, for the past few years, has never quite been up to scratch to be the starting centre-back for Manchester United. And look, they did have other positions to prioritise. I do understand that. Goalkeeper, they got Onana in. They went and eventually got Amrabat. And they've got Højlund in, who looks to be really exciting. But centre-back, for the past few years, I feel like we always go, like, is there enough depth there? Is there enough depth there if injuries happen? Are we going to be... And they've been linked to something... They have been linked to some really interesting...
Kim, heavily.
And Kim was a long one, but obviously he ended up going to Bayern Munich, and it's understandable why. But also young centre-backs who might be a bit more willing to kind of spend a bit of time on the bench whilst they build up their game time. Like
Pavard was not young, but he was linked.
It makes sense that you guys... And it was something that you guys looked at. Pavard, you banked on Pavard. You really did. And in the end, it just never worked out for you. But I think it was a poor move, and I wouldn't be surprised to see you in January go back into the market for another one. But I think it was a poor move to kind of just trust that, like, let's sign Johnny Evans and hope things work out for the season. I think that could be something that ends up biting you. Maybe it already has, to be honest, but biting you back.
Johnny Evans' great assist against Burnley.
A couple of mistakes. And you know what? Because of that, let's just respect Johnny for this one. Like, I agree. I think United should probably have dipped into the centre-back market, obviously. But, like, they didn't.
Which is a mistake.
It was a mistake, I agree. But I also think...
Let's talk about in-season mistakes.
Yeah, let's talk about for this one.
But your mistake just saying that, don't play Mason... Like, he's been injured, so they haven't made the mistake. They've just not had the option to do it.
It's difficult finding in-season mistakes as well.
Yeah. This is a really tough one. I want Doogie to come back into it a bit, so I'll make it 3-2.
Yes!
You have got a couple of pity points.
That's the spirit. Guys, I've travelled 2 hours to get here. Give me some pity points.
Your own mistake, my friend. Manchester City.
Go on, Zach.
Is there any
Try
point?
and find some mistakes.
Is there any point?
You look around the pitch and there's no issues, if we're being brutally honest. I think many Man City fans are looking at this situation and gone, oh, actually, I didn't expect us to be quite where we are.
Yeah.
I think when you look at that entire squad, they've done really well. I think some people questioned even about the Nunes signing, and I think in the end it's worked out really well. Kevin De Bruyne has got his injury, Kovacic got his injury, and then in the end they actually really did need him. It's going to be interesting to see what they do with Calvin Phillips.
Is that your mistake?
Yeah, I mean, it's
keeping
just,
Calvin.
Not necessarily it's just
But
not sorting out the
profile like
situation.
that,
Not sorting out the situation. I don't know if I've ever seen a manager sign a player for such a big fee and then basically not quite enjoy him being at the club as much as it was expected. Like, they spent a huge fee on him to bring him in, and he's just not played the football that you he might have been expecting. But I also sit there and I go, what the hell did you expect? Like, you're up against Rodri.
Well, I think Pep clearly thought he was going to be slightly better than he is, I guess.
He did say that.
Rodri is never injured.
Did you also see his thing recently about, like, I can't get him to play like he did with Bielsa?
Right.
Which is
I
like a crazy thing
but
to
it's
say.
tough, isn't it, this one?
It was
is
along
very
those
tough.
lines.
Yeah,
I
really
think he was
tough.
like, Bielsa got the full Phillips
Yeah.
out from I haven't yet, or something like that. I mean, Man City, all their new signings, you talk about, Phillips, but this year, Kovacic has hit the ground running. I think Gvardiol's really gone under the radar. He's been so solid. I mean, shock. He's absolutely incredible. Even Mateus Nunes, who Sane I wasn't a massive fan of at that fee, given his form for Wolves last year. He's been absolutely brilliant so far, so massive credit to him. Maybe the situation to keep an eye on is the left wing situation. Grealish has just come back from injury. I think he missed 6 games. That was his first injury layoff since joining City. And Jeremy Doku, I think, has been a breath of fresh air. And I wouldn't necessarily rush Grealish back, because I think Doku's looked really exciting. Go with the man on form. Like, Grealish against Newcastle has just come back from injury, as I said, but looked a little bit timid in possession. He completed 100% of his passes, which the Twitterati will use as like a criticism of him. But I do think he was lacking a little bit of confidence at times, whereas Doku is just so direct, so at his man, and is adding a lot of energy to a City attack that doesn't have that sort of thrust on the right-hand side, unless Doku's going to play there eventually. So I'd potentially keep Grealish on the bench for the next few weeks would be it's not really a mistake, but my future mistake maybe.
I don't think I'm going to award a point here. I think
He
another
is
time.
being brutal
I think I would.
today.
The one error
tough,
I
isn't
would have
it?
awarded a point is if one of you had said the mistake of rushing KDB back. I actually think they rushed KDB
what
back
from the Champions League final?
Yeah.
Post surgery. I don't think there was a need to rush him back into that role.
He was
I
surprised to
think
be playing as well, I remember.
he was surprised to be playing, and I remember like interviewing him that week and thinking that he's like him talking about like, oh, he's only recently come back to training, like he wasn't expecting to play that much, and then obviously stuck straight in, and a significant injury that is basically going to cost them 5 months of KDB, which I think is a real problem. So I would have awarded a point for a KDB injury there. That's what I would have said, but I'm not awarding a point as it is, so it remains 3-2.
Okay.
Luton Town.
Luton Town. They're actually doing okay, but they do need results to turn. They're 15th by expected points, which is actually quite impressive given they've played a game less. They've got that game against Burnley. I think it's on Tuesday next week, the game that was postponed because their stadium wasn't ready. That is absolutely massive for both sides, actually. There's some quite interesting stats about them. So they are taking the second lowest percentage of shots from outside the box after Brentford. So they're trying to get the ball into good areas, which is quite sensible from them. I think that's mainly down to the fact they're a really cross-heavy side as well. And, headers are unlikely to come from outside the box, etc. But in terms of their in-possession work, they've got some issues. They're 19th for possession. They're 19th for pass accuracy. And a lot of issues are stemming from the fact that his name is Jacob Brown in the middle of the park. He started 2 of their 5 games. One to keep an eye on, his central midfield passing stats, he's completing 53% of his passes. That is a major, major issue.
So you're saying replace him?
Take him out for now. He's only topping Kaminsky, their goalkeeper, in terms of pass completion rate, and he's your central midfielder. That's a massive issue. Another issue, Carlton Morris, supposedly this bulldozer, very good in the air, winning, I think, 40% of his aerial duels. Not good enough as well.
But he's not on a target man, Carlton Morris.
You can definitely... I mean, with the width that Issa Kabore and Ryan Giles and Alfie Doughty are providing, they are like a very... the wing-backs is very crucial to how they play.
They are.
And Carlton Morris needs to up his aerial win percentage. It's simple as that. Maybe it's not his strongest asset, but if he's going to play up front or up, with someone else in this side and be that front man... That needs to improve because they're not going to create a lot of chances through the third.
So what are you
saying?
Saying? Drop the best.
No, I'm saying drop
option
Jacob
got to score
Brown
goals.
and tell Carlton Morris just get some pings into the box in training.
Yeah, I have to say, like Carlton Morris, I think has been largely impressive. I think whenever I've watched him, like I think he holds the ball up quite well. He's pretty neat and tidy in possession. Obviously, a couple of centimetres away from scoring an absolute wonder goal against Wolves as well. Taking his penalties, okay. But I'm interested by the central midfield shout. I was not aware of the 53% passing accuracy statistic. That is pretty damning. DJ, can you top it?
I mean, to be honest, I found it quite difficult with Luton because I don't think they're considering everything they have going into this season, consider the really low budget. Essentially, they were never. A lot of teams that have been promoted since kind of the Brentford went up have been Premier League teams that are in the Championship who are ready for the Premier League. And Luton were very much a Championship team who were in the Premier League, almost the opposite way around. They don't have the style of play that Thomas Frank was playing with these players like Ivan Toney, who was fantastic, or Fulham and Mitrovic up top, who were easily Premier League forwards and Premier League players. Luton don't have that, and they don't have they never had the money to go and get that in. So when it felt harsh looking at them and being like they could score more goals, but they are basically, I feel, doing what they can and been quite a little bit unlucky. I saw the XG. They've actually, as you mentioned, been quite unlucky in front of goal.
They were great against Wolves last weekend.
Yeah, they did do well. I mean,
They
they
were okay
got the
against
lucky.
Wolves.
They got a lucky decision.
Yeah,
against
the red
India.
card
They're
was
okay
fortunate.
against Wolves.
They were dominating before the red card as well.
I mean,
I
the
thought they played
penalty
pretty
as well.
well.
The penalty is lucky. Goodness gracious. So I'll be honest. I have no single thing to point out that this is the mistake they're making. I just think they are
up
a
against
Championship team in the Premier League.
It's always difficult when you come out via the playoffs as well because you've got that little bit less time to prepare as well.
Okay, we've been going for 45 minutes and we're only through 9 teams, so we're going to have to be
up the pace.
keeping the
This
pace
is what happens every
high
single
here,
time.
yeah.
Every single
Liverpool.
Liverpool.
Who got the point for that, or you're not giving one?
Oh, sorry. I think I'm going to go for Dukes
Yeah,
with the
fair
midfield.
enough.
I'm
Fair enough.
brings it back
3-3. Liverpool, unbeaten in 17 league games. Very, very impressive. 5 wins in 6 this year. Spurs, Brighton, Everton in the next 3. That's a big test. We've already talked
You weren't
about
having
that
them on
Spurs game.
team talk a couple of weeks ago.
I don't think they are necessarily guaranteed top 4. I don't think any side is guaranteed
That
top 4
stinks,
other
mate.
than Man City. Seriously, I think there are some defensive issues at Liverpool.
I
but
think
their
there are some
attack,
defensive issues.
Their attack has been spectacular.
Yeah.
They are first
The
for
midfield's
expected
been
goals.
great.
The midfield's been great as well, but I still don't think McAllister is going to be good enough as a 6, because it's
Yeah.
not really his role, against the bigger sides as well. And maybe they'll introduce Endo, maybe they'll try and convert Gravenberch into a more defensive-minded 6. But I think there will be issues, especially as their injuries continue, and they've had a lot of red cards as well. So there are obviously factors in that, but I don't think Liverpool have impressed me that much defensively. Luckily, they do have the miracle worker in goal as well.
Yeah.
And they've got players come back from injury.
They've got players come back from
been
injury.
injured
So
banned,
I'm not worried
Trent's
about
been-
Liverpool. It was a clip that we're actually talking about Spurs in that clip anyway, and then they found the bit about Liverpool, and it goes viral.
Yeah.
Classic, whatever.
Do you
Right.
take some heat there?
Big time. My advice is to back Darwin Núñez. Really back him. Get him starting every game in the league. He's a shot monster. He's an absolute shot monster. I think he's taking the most shots in the league per 90 this year. He's over 5.
So the mistake's not playing him enough.
5.7. Just keep him in the side. Keep him in the side. Don't revert to Cody Gakpo. Don't revert to Diogo Jota. Get a Diaz, Núñez, Salah front line clicking. I think Darwin Núñez does have such an upside because he does just get an incredible amount of shots in the box. And now he's starting to finish them, unlike last year. He's got 4 goals in 8 games this year. He's operating at 0.152 expected goals and assists per 90.
152. That was a triple digit.
Insane. Absolutely insane. And his expected assists are also at 0.25. So he's creating, he's finishing now. I'm really enjoying watching him play.
I love watching Núñez play football. It's just
Okay,
like
so your
chaos
mistake is not
energy.
seeing enough Núñez. What's
I
your
will
mistake?
say it has worked in being the impact sub though as well.
It's not the time.
Release
the hound.
Yeah, but I think last season we saw him struggle sometimes when he was starting, and to
Yeah.
be fair, it's got better this season. So yeah, maybe it has changed.
What's
but
your mistake
His
then?
impact sub. I think the mistake again. I'm going to go back to more of the summer. Was just not getting an all-out DM. They tried really hard. We've seen that they tried really hard with Caicedo. They were going to spend ridiculous amount of money for him and Lavia, and in the end, they had to make a very quick, rash decision to go and get Endo. I'm going to be pretty honest. I don't think we've seen enough of Endo to be like he's been successful or unsuccessful. He's fine. But really, they need, even if it's in January, it might cost an arm and a leg to do it. But Fulham are going to go sell João Palhinha
Are they?
to
Just sign
buy
that new
him.
deal.
But he's very keen to move still. Go do some work there if you can to try and get him, whatever it might be. Maybe it's still you want a bit more of a younger DM for sure. But I think the mistake was not getting in a defensive midfielder to play this season. I think Endo is. I basically think in the long run, and maybe they correct the mistake come January, but in the long run that may be something that we see go against them.
The good news is they've got Dom Szoboszlai.
Yeah.
What a player!
Oh, mate, fantastic. He's been one of the signings of the
And
season.
would they have
hasn't
signed
he?
Dom Szoboszlai if they got Caicedo in?
True.
I don't think they would have. I don't think
They
they
would
would
have.
have.
it was
It was
after.
after. They
was
put
after.
the bids after signing Szoboszlai.
Was it?
Yeah.
Oh, my bad.
Yeah,
My
crazy.
bad, everybody.
Szoboszlai was the first signing, right? That's right.
No, McAllister was.
McAllister was.
Okay.
Then Szoboszlai.
I think I'm gonna go for the in-season here. I would like to see more Darwin as well. I just want to see more minutes for
Sorry,
Darwin.
how's he getting pity points?
4-3. my
It's
friend.
not always
Fulham,
pity
we
points.
gotta keep this show rolling,
He's been
boys.
given 2 pity points.
Let's keep
Yeah,
the
let's
show
keep it going. We don't have
rolling
time for
on
this,
to
Zach.
Fulham.
2 pity points. This
Fulham,
is
do you want to go with
ridiculous.
Fulham?
Well, we'll go for the same thing that we've been saying for half of this whole episode. Back up like a striker. Raul Jimenez for the past 2 years hasn't cut the grade.
Yeah. So the mistake was signing Raul Jimenez for you.
Yeah, and not getting someone that's better. Like it was known very early on that Mitrovic wanted to leave. He was offered obviously an incredible amount of money. He wanted to go. They got to the season basic starting and still hadn't done the deal. It got to a point where they must have known at some point they were going to sell him. They had done no work to go and get in a replacement for him. This is somebody that since they had come up was the reason they were in the Premier League. He was everything. He was incredible in front of goal for them. You just saw the difference when he was injured last season or banned last season to how different Spurs, how different Fulham were playing. So you would have liked to think they'd done a bit more research or done a bit more.
Reese, I'm just calling out the scouting department.
Or done but just done a bit more. Like I felt like you
calling
never
out
saw them.
DOF.
You never saw them linked to any striker that was like, oh, okay, he could replace Mitrovic, or there's a possibility. When they were linked to Raul Jimenez, did any of us ever think like, aha, what a replacement he's going to be for Mitrovic? No, not at all. But maybe they thought, okay, we're going to keep Mitrovic and have him as a backup. That's not too bad. Carlos Vinicius.
Give him a go. I just
Like,
don't.
he's
I'm
alright.
not
He's
convinced
definitely,
as
I
to
think-
why he's not getting a go. Like I think if I was Marco Silva, I would be starting Carlos Vinicius over Raul Jimenez.
But this is why
This is good
Marco
news,
Silva
Joe.
must be
Come
raging.
on, what's your mistake, big
My
man?
suggestion was not starting Carlos Vinicius
Oh!
over Raul Jimenez.
Oh!
Yeah, I think he's definitely worth the go. I think, last year, 5 goals, 2 assists in just over 1,000 league minutes.
He's still not good enough, though.
I think he's better than Raul Jimenez. He's definitely in more form than Raul Jimenez as well. It
But
feels
get
harsh
someone-
criticising Raul Jimenez constantly, but it is a big talking point at Fulham. Carlos Vinicius did well for Spurs in the Europa League, I believe, a couple of years ago as
And
well.
not forgetting that trick.
What, where they got knocked out, didn't they? By like, I just think he's not good enough either.
All right, I'm gonna let Henry decide this. You're the Fulham fan behind the camera. It's easy. It's Doogie. he
Love it.
says.
The comeback
Christ.
is done.
5-3.
So you're telling
in
me
the
Carlos
lead.
Vinicius is going to be your 10-goal striker? But what is fine? 5 goals.
But Zach, that's not the question. Is what is the mistake?
The mistake. That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying. The mistake is not getting someone better than both of them.
But that mistake's gone. We're talking
Yeah,
about the
mate,
mistake
that
right
is
now.
old
Old
news,
news,
baby.
mate.
Oh,
Mate, it's nearly October. Get with the times, Jalab.
Carlos Vinicius is back, baby.
That's such poor decision-making.
5-3. Heads gone over here. Next side we're talking about is the Toffees, who
Yeah.
are seeing
I'll let-
a resurgence.
Yeah, I'll let Zach recover. Let this head land. First win of the season last weekend against Brentford. Huge win against Villa in the Cup. But
Yeah.
actually played a really strong side as well. And I think they've got some little bit of a squad issue in that they don't really have a natural right winger. They've got Danjuma, they've got McNeil, they've got Harrison on the left, but Harrison was actually playing on the right against Villa. James Garner's played there as well. That's a little bit of a squad error. But weirdly, I'm going back to the summer. I'm going against myself. I think they should have sold Ben Godfrey. He's only played a minute of Premier League football this year. Barely got a look in 2023, since Dyche has got going after that broken leg as well. I think he looked like a really promising centre-half a few years ago. Never really put in his best performances at centre-half, and then was used at left-back, was used at right-back, and just struggled to nail down a place. But yeah, I think they could have got some money for Ben Godfrey, which potentially is pretty useful for Everton, particularly in the summer when they're struggling financially.
So you're saying mistake not selling Godfrey, you're saying?
Stop starting Idrissa Gueye. Start Onana and Garner together. Garner's been playing on the wing. I think that's not necessarily getting the best out of him. Get him in the middle with Onana. I think Onana's
And
played his
Nakura.
best. Yeah, and Onana's played his best football with more of the double pivot. Sorry,
Yeah.
of Onana and Garner. I think Onana's played his best football when he's playing as a 6. I think that's where you've seen the best of him.
I agree.
I think he can get better and develop more going forward. And that can come with time, but like they spent a decent chunk of change on Garner last season, and
Chunk of
things
change.
didn't quite work. Yeah,
Right,
I've got
Yankee.
really good.
Zach
But
Gillette.
they,
Coming
But-
in from Arkansas.
and to be fair, obviously things didn't go well in terms of injuries for Garner last season. That's sure, but he's back and he looks bright, and so I think they need to drop Idrissa Gueye, who's making too many mistakes. I think at the moment, I think his time might have come. I think
Okay.
now.
Yeah.
I like that argument Jalab put forward. I like Onana in the 6 a lot more. I'm going with a point to you there, 5-4.
God, absolutely nailed by
El Palace.
Palace, I think they're doing a pretty good job. I mean, most of these sides are doing a pretty good job. I mean, Palace have a really lengthy injury list, as we saw.
Yeah, really.
And, they made some changes against Man United. That was a pretty poor performance. But they were beating Villa the other day up until the 87th minute, and then they scored some wonderful goals. Disappointing 0-0 draw against Fulham last weekend. But I don't think they're doing too badly at all. Maybe they could rotate Joel Ward and Chris Richards a bit more. I mean, Chris Richards is back from injury now. He played quite a few games for Bayern a few years ago as a right back and as a centre back. Palace have a fairly... Well, it's not actually that old a defence. It's just really Joel Ward. But
Yeah.
Joel Ward is... We keep on talking about him. He's actually quite crucial to the way they play. He's a pretty solid performer. Not particularly good in the air this season. He's only won 35% of his aerial duels, but it's early days. I'd just like to see Chris Richards be given a chance because this is a guy at Bayern who looked like he could be a very solid top 5 league performer.
So Palace fans, because I thought their season has been pretty decent.
Yeah.
2 wins, 2 draws, 2 losses. Palace fans aren't happy. They're not happy. They basically feel like they could be pushing up the table, and they feel their owners are very much doing stuff to just keep them in the league. That's what they believe at the moment. The injury list that you mentioned is extremely long, and they signed 2 players that were injured. They feel like that was a silly move.
Francis
They've got
still not played, is he?
They've got 2 aging right backs. They've got only 1 left back in Tyreek Mitchell. They feel like he's somebody that needs at least a little bit of cover because if he gets injured, what happens there? The other issue as well they felt was that even though he started really well, Odsonne Edouard,
Shot monster.
yeah, it's
Suddenly.
not been. I think the last few years that we've seen him in the Premier League, he's not been that great. He's not been somebody to really link the attack. And the same with Mateta. Like they've had bright moments, and we've seen Edouard's bright moment already this season. But they spent 20 million on a backup goalkeeper who's now out for a little bit. And obviously, it was against Manchester United. It's not you can't foresee that stuff happening for sure. But not getting another striker that I think could have been better in front of goal. And that's harsh. I think Edouard's done really well.
So your mistake is what, squad management? Really?
No, I think basically it feels. I think the squad management. The error or the mistake is basically being a little bit too conservative with Palace this season.
I'm going to give you the point, Zach. I think I would like to see.
They've been conservative though.
They've
been raining down shots.
I think in the market they have been a bit conservative. I would like to see them punch a little bit more. And maybe that is down to financial restraints at the club and the ownership. But I kind of wanted to see them in the summer take that next step, maybe that Aston Villa style step where they
kept Elise,
really
right? They kept Elise. They look like they're going to get Eze on a new contract.
Yeah. Okay, so what does that make the scores? Is that 5-4?
It makes the scores
5-4 to Dukes, I believe. Next club up,
Chelsea. Big one.
I'm on 5. Sorry.
I
think you could focus on.
Are you on 5 as well?
I think it might be 5-5. I think there's a few areas you could go with Chelsea. We could talk about their summer. We could talk about the fact that they didn't really sign an experienced, not necessarily a very promising striker, because I think Nicholas Jackson is incredibly promising, but maybe they should have signed another more experienced striker to help them through this sort of
just
phase.
50 million.
But actually, I think in the last few weeks, the bigger error is actually going on in terms of squad selection. I don't think Colwill should play as a left back. I think it's affecting his performances. I think it's affecting his passing, which was such an asset at Brighton last year. Look, when you play at left side centre back, as he did at Brighton, or left back, it is actually quite a big difference in terms of the angles, where you're being pressed from, the options in front of you. He's learning to play with new players in a position he's unfamiliar with. I just don't think it makes a lot of sense, especially when Chilwell has been fit, I think, the entire season.
He's now out.
Okay, now out. Okay, but you could play Maatsen there. Yeah. There are other options, and Maatsen was great for Burnley last year, and Colwill is not playing particularly well as a left back. I think he got done by Watkins last weekend. I think he got done by Antonio a few weeks before that.
I think he's unlucky against Watkins. He makes the block and then he falls onto the...
I mean, there was an error in the lead up to it as well. But I think it is affecting his performances. They do really need to win their next 2 games. They got Fulham and Burnley, because then they play every member of the top 4 from last year and Spurs and Brentford before, I think it's December. So it is a really tough run of fixtures in October and November, or in the latter part of October. But there are some. I mean, if you look at their stats, it is going to click, or at least the results should pick up. But I think Colwill at centre back is an easy fix.
I can agree to that. I actually think it might be happening already. Obviously, when when Gusto got sent off, we then see Colwill kind of step in the centre back against Brighton on the weekend, on Wednesday. Yeah. He was playing centre back, and Chilwell was playing left back. Now Chilwell's done his hammy. We'll see what happens there. I think it's squad selection as well, but slightly further up the pitch. I think Enzo needs to drop back a bit and put Cole Palmer there. Cole Palmer was really, and maybe it was, maybe it was just a bit of an adaptation period to let's get Cole Palmer used to it and then put him there. Whilst Nkunku is out, play Cole Palmer in this 10 position and drop Enzo as a double pivot with Caicedo. Like in the summer we were sitting there going, Enzo and Caicedo are going to be amazing as double pivot. Caicedo joins and suddenly Enzo's pushing further up the pitch. I think Enzo does a job further forward. I think he's good, but I think you get the best out of him when he's a little bit further back, got everything else in front of him, and he can just pick his passes and keep it ticking. And when Cole Palmer's there in front of him, I think that's a really nice midfield. I think Gallagher offers a lot to this Chelsea side, and there's a lot that Poch likes about him, but it's tough in terms of, especially when you look at who's been at Chelsea the longest. Gallagher's probably one of those players now. He's only been there about a season and a half. But I think you do need to play Enzo and Caicedo with Cole Palmer as that 10. I think that's what's got to happen. I think that's got to happen more so than Colwill playing centre-back. But I do think Colwill has to play centre-back as well.
I think you're both right here. I'm going to give you both a point. I just don't get why we're not seeing an Enzo and Caicedo double pivot, man.
Especially
get him dictating the tempo. You want everything going through Enzo. At the moment, he just looks a bit lost in 10. And Colwill, play him at centre half. He's a centre half.
I think that's about to happen.
Yeah, I think. Although with the Chilwell injury, TBC. So
yeah, very
I'm
true.
going to give you both a point. So 6-6 going into Burnley.
Okay, Burnley. Last few games have actually been more promising than the previous 4 or whatever it was. Draw against Forest last week. I thought they were good against Man United at the weekend.
Yeah,
Thrashed
unlucky
Salford
against Man
in the
United.
Cup. Salford are in League 2. They should beat them. But yeah, they've got Newcastle away this weekend. Then they've got that huge game against Luton, as I already mentioned. In terms of possession, as we know, Vincent Kompany wants to integrate this possession style of play. He's doing that quite effectively. They're 8th for possession, they're 8th for pass accuracy, but they're far too easy to counter-attack. They do very little with it as well. They're only 17th for shots. Possession for possession's sake, it feels like unless something's going through Koleosho, there's not that much creativity in that side. But they're 19th for shots on target, 16th for shots per game.
But they have had a diabolical run of fixtures.
They have.
Statistics.
But I think that's far too easy to counter-attack, and that's actually what I'm going to focus on as well. That could be fixed now. Josh Brownhill's back from injury. He completed more tackles than anyone in the Burnley squad last year. After that, it was Maatson, who's obviously now back at Chelsea. So Brownhill will make a big difference. And then I'd keep Charlie Taylor as their left back as well. I think he's made a big impact since he's come on. I think he's a really solid Premier League player, to be totally honest. Ranks really highly for tackles, really highly for interceptions, a reasonably good passer as well, or at least has proven to be under Kompany. He wasn't used so much in that way under Dyche beforehand. So keep Brownhill in midfield and keep Charlie Taylor at left back.
Okay.
So yeah, mine's more like I think they're being a little bit naive. Like I do agree. It's nice to see. Like for instance, I mentioned them earlier when Brentford came up. Right, they were playing very dominating football in the Championship. But they came to the Premier League and they went, okay, look, there are going to be some games we can't do this. We can't be the team to have 50, 60% possession. We've got to be a little bit more scrappy. I think Burnley need to become a little bit more like that, especially in certain games. I do think against Manchester United, they were unlucky not to put the ball in the back of the net at least once. They obviously hit the post. But yeah, like they're playing, what I put it down here, they're playing pretty football, which is maybe nice for the neutral to watch. But in certain games in the Premier League, when you're coming up against much more an opposition which are used to playing against this kind of football and kind of playing you on the counter, it's just not going to work. It's not going to work. And so I think they need to basically, the mistake that I'm going to say is they need to stop being so naive.
Wisen up.
I'm going with Zach. I'm going with naivety there, and I think
It's
it
very
partly
broad.
does come down to
I do
having
think
such a young
it's
squad,
basically
but
kind of the same thing. Though,
Kinda
what me and
similar.
Diggy- I'm again happy to share a point.
No,
here.
no.
you've been given a point.
Fair play.
The
Right,
assistant manager's
let's keep this moving
opinion is
because we
final.
are approaching the hour mark, I believe.
Yes, Brighton, really difficult run of fixtures. Really, really difficult. They've got Villa, Marseille, Liverpool, Man City, Ajax in their next few. Marseille away next week. Get ready, Brighton. That is going to be an absolute rocket ship of an atmosphere. Is that even a phrase?
They're
Whatever.
playing well, aren't they, Marseille?
Marseille as well, yeah. Managerless Marseille. De Zerbi this season is being really careful with his youngest players in his squad. Like Adingra has only played 207 league minutes. Fati's played 71. Buonanotte's barely featured. Balebra 2, just 17. And he is keeping Evan Ferguson back. I think it's maybe to manage expectations. Danny Welbeck's a really experienced striker and I think has always been underrated, to be honest. But I think it's time to unleash him, baby. Get him in that starting 11 week on, week out, mainly for my fantasy team. It's time.
Okay, so your mistake's not playing Ferguson enough. Yours is...
Yeah, again, really, really tough, as Doogie said. They've made... Their transfers they've brought in might affect them in the long term. So basically, the guys they brought in, they did have players in those positions already. They had guys like Moran, Rushworth, Ayari, and Kozlowski, who have all gone out on loan. And actually, when you look at Brighton's players that have gone out on loan, they've not tended to do that well.
Wow.
And they've not been able...
Tell that to Carol.
They've not been able to sell them on for big fees later on. Okay, there's one there that has done
And
pretty
Dingra's
well,
come back?
for sure. However, for a lot of these guys that have been out on loan, Ostergaard is somebody who went out on loan.
He's now at Napoli.
Now not looking so. Yeah, but they're not getting the fees for him like they have been for other players, because basically their loans haven't been at the level of Brighton are playing their football, and they're not able to develop under Brighton's football and do so well. So I think maybe the one for me, and again it's tough, it's really difficult.
It is tough.
is
But I think
their
Brighton's
loans.
path to the first team has been fairly successful in recent years. I think you've seen players like Karo Matoma, you've seen Andingra this year, go out, succeed, come back, and if they're good enough, can come back and have impacts in the team. I think you've also got young players like Billy Gilmore, Evan Ferguson having impacts in the side that have been signed. I think their path and their recruitment can never be a mistake at this stage.
Okay.
I'm afraid, Brighton fans, I'm going with Doogie, which takes it back level, I think 7-7.
Okay, the comeback is on. Henry celebrating behind the
Henry's
camera.
fist pumping.
I don't know why he's on my team.
Yeah.
I love it.
Brentford.
Good to have some backing. Do you want to go first? I've been going first in the last week.
Yeah, no, sure thing.
Problems here?
Yeah, there are problems,
Oh,
and I
not
think
good.
it is up top. Again, It's interesting that going into this season, Thomas Frank seemed happy to kind of go with this front line of Mbeumo and Visser. And whilst they had a good start, I think it's kind of fallen off a little bit now, and you are starting to see the issues without Tony. When you actually look at when Tony's out of the squad, they have a better win percentage than when he's actually in
crazy.
it, which is
In
crazy to say. Yeah, it's in the Premier League,
Probably
which is crazy to
he's
say.
out of the team about
This
8
is
games.
this is it. This is it. And I feel like recently you're starting to see Brentford not actually have a proper idea of what to do when there's no Tony there, when Visser and Mbeumo are kind of defended well against or not giving a lot of the ball or opportunities. There's just no other option there. With Tony, they did have the option of just, okay, let's get it up to him. He can hold it and play it. And Visser and Mbeumo aren't able to do that. And Mbeumo's more so much preferring to kind of play in behind and run onto long balls or whatever it might be. And so it's a tough one. Like, it's just basically not coming up with a Tony alternative, because it also feels like Tony's going to go in January, which is a weird thinking that they didn't think, okay, let's go and try and get the guy in now. Kevin Chard's also been injured too, so a bit of a miss there. But yeah, just getting a Tony replacement for me.
Lack of Tony replacement, Dukes.
I actually went on a different sort of way. I think their team now generally picks itself, particularly in midfield and particularly in defence. But I'm a little bit concerned that Christopher Ayers not getting more minutes. Pinnock and Me are now into their 30s. You know, Me was exceptional last year. It's very difficult to drop him. But Christopher Ayer was their record signing a few years ago. That's now been replaced a few times. But he looked really, really good for Celtic. I think he was pretty good for Brentford in his first year, then had some injury issues last year. But he's barely getting a look in. And I'd like to see the next generation of Brentford centre-back come through.
I'm going with Zach there.
Okay.
I think it was a mistake. Not
Bit of an easy one,
Tony
though.
Replacement,
Yeah.
Because I agree. I think we all knew that
Again,
he
not
was
an
going to
in-season
leave.
mistake.
Yeah, not really an in-season mistake, but I agree with that one. 8-7 to Jalab.
Okay, Bournemouth. I think Bournemouth have been slightly unlucky in that the composition of their midfield hasn't been what they wanted, because they've had to play Billing further back because Tyler Adams has been injured. They've often played Joe Rothwell and Lewis Cook alongside him. I think, Tyler Adams makes an enormous difference to that side. But I think when they get everyone fit, it could be Justin Kluivert or Lewis Sinisterra on the left. And then Dango Ouattara or Antoine Semenyo is playing a lot of minutes this season as well. He went on loan to Sunderland a few years ago. He was not good, but maybe it just shows where Sunderland were at that time. Playing off Solanke as well. But I'd get Billing in the 10. I think Billing is so good in the faster stages.
Though?
Yeah, when he comes back as well, a good factor to think in. Maybe he could rotate with Billing. But my issue is that Hamid Traore is not playing that much at the moment. I actually think he was really, really good in his minutes for Bournemouth last year and for Sassuolo the year before that as well. In his minutes for Bournemouth last year. And he must have played about close to 10 games. He was averaging 2.9 key passes per 90. And I think they're pressing really well, Bournemouth, but they're not really creating that many chances when they win the ball high up. I think Hamid Traore makes a big difference to that. So I'd get him in the side.
Yeah, you kind of mentioned my point, which I think is a mistake. I think considering Jefferson Lerma left the club, it was odd to just go and get an injured Tyler Adams to replace him, because he's not going to be about for a long time. And I think Cook's done a decent job in that kind of role in midfield. But Tyler Adams was out for a long time, and you've gone, okay, we're just going to see what can happen. And that's really a tough thing to do in the Premier League, to just kind of hope we'll be okay by November, December time, and see whether he can fit in then, and then we'll shore up our midfield. I think they should have probably got another person out there that can play that role really, really well. Maybe they are just limited to being more of a destroyer and winning back that ball. But they seem to have full confidence in Cook just doing that. And I think he's a bit of a different player to what Tyler Adams would be doing in that midfield. So again, I think with Alex Scott, you can make that sign and go, okay, he's injured, but he'll come back eventually. But with Tyler Adams, it was one, okay, we've lost Jefferson Lerma. We've now got nobody to play this position.
I'm going to go with Dukes on this one. I think that Tyler Adams is that good for in terms of a Bournemouth sign. They couldn't say no to signing.
The other thing is,
like
it's going to be interesting to see what they do with Solanke injured.
Yeah.
Is he now out?
He got injured against Stoke. So they were saying that Semenyo might play 9.
Okay, I believe that makes it 8-all.
Wow, 2 to go. Final stages.
Aston Villa.
Do you want to go first?
Well, I was going to say a bit of a serious kind of jokey one. The kits. The biggest mistake. They seem to be having a huge problem with that. Yeah. So they might have corrected that mistake already. The other issue is defending against better teams. Aston Villa have had a really good start to the season. Obviously, they did lose by quite a big score to Newcastle and Liverpool. And so I think that's maybe where they've got to start looking. They've defended pretty well against other teams, the lower teams like the Chelseas of the world. But against teams where they have a better attack or better firepower, they seem to be struggling. And this was kind of the worry with Pau Torres, for instance. He's great in games where you're going to be dominating the ball and getting him on it all the time. But maybe there's a worry there when he's got to do a bit more defensive work. And I think right now, and again, it's a small sample size, so we don't know what it's going to be like. It'll be interesting when they play the likes of Arsenal and Brighton and so on and so forth, for instance. But yeah, right now, I think it's that kind of playing against better teams in defensively where there is a mistake that is happening.
I think in the summer, they probably should have signed another right back. That was a mistake in the summer. I think right now, I think it's time to play your player that's in form, and I think it's Leon Bailey. I think he's looking really, really good this season, to be honest. I know they've got a lot of options for those options either side of Diaby and Watkins and McGinn. They've got Zaniolo, who's looked really good, and Leon Bailey, of course, as well. Jacob Ramsey's now back from injury, but Leon Bailey's been absolutely brilliant so far this season. He's got 2 goals and 1 assist in 5 appearances. He's only played 204 minutes, so he's 11th in the squad for that. Only Moussa Diaby has contributed more goals. He's at 0.89 expected goals and assists per 90, and he looks like he's finally adapted to the league. He's contributing more, and I think to be honest, their midfield and 2 of their attack pick themselves. It's really those debate either side of them. I think maybe Leon Bailey time.
Well, given it's a draw at the moment, and I want to get a winner out of this, I'm going to say neither of you. I actually think their biggest mistake is not taking the cups more seriously. I think Villa...
They played a strong side.
I think, well, it was strong to a level, and it played terribly.
Yeah, they did play badly.
They were poor in Europe as well. I just think the Carabao Cup, if you're Villa, if you're that level of team,
Villa,
it's
Brighton, West Ham.
Such a big opportunity to win silverware that you otherwise are not going to win. I just think you've got to go double down in the Carabao Cup almost, even if you have to take a hit at the weekend's fixtures. I know they played a semi-strong squad, but if I was a Villa fan, I'd be pulling my hair out and going out there.
Yeah, I think it's an understandable shout.
And it leaves the open door for a winner.
Okay. My mistake is selling Xhaka.
Oh!
I think Arsenal, considering where they were and considering how well Xhaka played last year, even if they had the idea of let's bring in Kai Havertz, they should have probably kept Xhaka.
So not signing Havertz, it's selling Xhaka.
You can sign. In my book, you can sign Havertz, but also keep Xhaka at the same time. So you can have this period of okay, Kai, you don't have to hit the ground running. We've got Xhaka here as well to do the role if needed as well. I know he wanted to move too, but Bernardo Silva's wanted to move to Barcelona for years, and Man City have kept him. And it's not that Arsenal aren't going to be playing great football. They look fantastic. So that he is at a good side. The issue, I think, is they shouldn't have sold him. And if at least give it to January. If, say, come January, he's not really played that much and Kai Havertz is looking better by then, you can sell him then.
Big offer, though, wasn't it? It was a big offer with 1 year left on his contract. I think they got a great fee for Granit Xhaka.
1 year left on his contract. Really nice time to say goodbye. He'd had such a good year. He's attracted by the Xabi Alonso project.
It's not my favourite shout of yours.
Mate.
It's not my favourite shout of yours. I really like Xhaka last season.
So well.
No, but that would have been a better shout then. That would have been a better shout. That would have been a better shout.
I think there's also been factors around Kai Havertz. I'm not sure he would have played as much if Thomas Partey hadn't got injured as well. There has been other factors. But I think the error in terms of squad selection right now, I know he started against Spurs last week, but I think keep Fabio Vieira in that slot.
He was shocking.
He was not good against Spurs. He was not good at all. Zach is fighting hard for this win.
He's injured as well.
No, he's not.
Yeah, he's out.
Okay.
So how are you going to start him when he's on the injury list?
I might have just conceded the win.
Arteta did say today in his press conference that Fabio.
Today I was going to the south coast of England. Oh, that's a shocker. But I can give you the stats
so
anyway
because they are. Start more Fabio Vieira?
I think they at current form as well because they are really lacking in creativity. I put that tweet out earlier this week. Odegaard's at 0.06 expected assists per 90 this season. Anthony's created more chances than him so far. Fabio Vieira, only Trossard tops his 0.43. And he was very good when he came on against Man United. He's been very good in his cameos. He was poor against Spurs. And they do need to settle in this midfield. But with Rice injured, potentially with Partey out, I think it's time to give Vieira more of an opportunity over Havertz.
Yeah, maybe in November.
Oh,
how long is the injury for?
I think it's just
I don't
a
think
light
it's terrible.
little
I don't
knock.
think it's terrible.
He'll be fine.
Yeah, okay, so your mistake is not is not giving
But
Vieira more minutes.
his mistake doesn't happen
when
if they
Havertz
don't
is
make
playing.
my mistake.
And your mistake is selling Xhaka. I think they sold Xhaka at the right time. I think that Xhaka being sold at that age with one year left on contract for that fee was a really good bit of business. The issue has been the replacement and the kind of football being played. So Doogie's taking a point for not seeing Fabio Vieira get more minutes, despite the fact.
So you happy with those pity points earlier on now? Those 2 pity points you
They were
gave him
not
earlier
pity
on.
points.
They were slight pity points.
Yeah.
A win is a win.
Either way,
Yeah, I
Doogie
think
takes
that's poor.
the victory 9-8,
That's
I
so
think,
poor.
or 8-7 by
Only for
1
D.
point anyway.
Proper round.
If you enjoyed this video, then please do hit the like button. It's a long one, so I hope you got through. Thanks very much for watching, everybody. See you later. Goodbye.